Right. Hello, everyone. How are we doing? I don't know about you, but it is still kind of the morning for me, getting ready to be the afternoon. But here in quarantine, have breakfast at any time. So, uh, for this morning for breakfast, I actually had some bacon. I had an omelet. I had a little bit of toast. I'd love to hear what. Give me a shout out. Tell me your name and what you had for breakfast, or maybe you haven't eaten breakfast just yet. What you like as your favorite breakfast food. You know, breakfast is actually the beginning and how we start our day. And today we're going to talk about building and leading remote teams. So we're going to start from the beginning and where we start in leading and building teams and leading and building remote teams. Like we start our day with breakfast, we're going to start this conversation by talking about the different types of options, the different formats of remote teams. See, not all remote teams are alike. There's actually three major different categories of remote teams. See, the first is globally remote teams. The next, so globally remote teams. So these are going to be teams that literally are all over the world. Here at the Pathways Group, we actually do have globally remote teams. We have team members uh, literally in all over the world. Then you have domestically remote teams. So these are going to be teams that are in the same general area. So they might be in the same country, might be in the same region. So they are in the same general area, but they are still remote. And then you have hybrid remote teams. So these are teams that spend some time at home. They're spending a little bit of time working remotely, but then they might go into the office maybe 1 or 2 days a week, maybe a few times, maybe a month. And so it's important to keep in mind that not all remote teams are made equal. There actually are three major different types of remote teams, and we need to keep this in mind whenever we are thinking about how we are building our policy and how we are leading our teams. So I'm going to lead a globally remote team a little bit differently than a hybrid remote team. So keep that in mind whenever you are looking at your remote team within your organization. Now, we're talking about building and leading remote teams. So I first am going to talk really about building your team and what we should be looking for in our remote workers. Then we'll go into some practical steps of what you can do to lead those remote teams. See, whenever we are looking for remote talent, many people wonder, what should I be looking for in that talent? Are the interviews going to be different? Is there a different criteria that I should be looking for? And for that, I actually look to one of my favorite authors, Patrick Lencioni, that writes that the ideal team player actually contains three major facets. And that is that the ideal team player is humble, is hungry, and is smart. Humble is hungry and is smart. And this applies to all team players, but this really has a significant impact on remote teams. See, we want team members that are humble, meaning team players that are willing to be trained, team members that are ready to admit whenever mistakes have been made. The likelihood for miscommunication in a remote environment, in any environment, but in a remote environment specifically, is very high. We want to have team members that are humble and can have that humility. We also want team members that are hungry, team members that are going to be self-driven. The last thing that we want in a remote team is to be wondering if our team members are at home actually doing the work that we're paying them to do. We want team members that are self-led, that are driven, that are hungry, that are going to continuously learn and continuously adapt as we are continuously learning and adapting in this remote season today. And then lastly, you want team members that are smart. Now, smartness actually has two different meanings in this context. See, we want team members that are intelligent, that can do the job. They have the skills and the education and the ability to do the job that we hired them for. So they have a high IQ. They also have a high EQ. Relationships and clear communication are key to remote success. And having team members that have a high IQ in addition to a high EQ is critical to your remote success. So keep in mind, there's 3 different categories, different types of remote teams. Whenever we are building our remote team, I want you to ask 3 major questions of the people that you're bringing into your remote organization or team. Ask yourself, are they humble? Meaning, are they trainable? Do they have humility and want to? Are they hungry? Are they self-driven? Do they take ownership? And are they smart? Meaning, do they have a high IQ in addition to a high EQ? And so, whenever we are building our teams, I encourage you to use this as a guiding criteria whenever you are forming your team. Now, whenever we are building our team, there are actually 3 major areas in which we must provide clarity. See, sometimes whenever we are in a remote organization, there is a greater opportunity for some complexity. And in these turbulent times, the complexity continues to grow. Sometimes complexity can jade clarity. So as a leader within our team, we must clarify 3 major things. First, we must clarify our expectations. This reminds me whenever I was actually working in a hybrid remote team in India. Actually, I was working for a sports team, a soccer team. A few years ago, I actually left my job in corporate America to become the only American, only female, only Christian, and only blonde academy football coach or soccer coach for the Adidas Game Day Academies and Paris Saint-Germain, PSG Academies in Bangalore, India. And as I joined the team, I discovered that our teams were operating under a very strict command-obey dynamic. Oftentimes, our players would come to sessions and they would stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for instruction. And they would come to our sessions and they would stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for direction. And they would come to our sessions and they would stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for feedback. And while this may have been an efficient way to teach a skill, might have been an easy way to teach a task, in a game scenario, it was a disaster. Oftentimes, our players, within the course of the match, would kick the ball perfectly, exactly the way that we taught them. And then, before the play was even over, turn to the sideline to the coach for further direction and feedback. They had mastered the task, but they didn't quite understand how it applied to the overall game scenario. Now, in order for us to really make that organizational change, we first had to clarify our expectations. See, rather than commanding the task, we simply began communicating the what and the why. This is something that we implement in our remote teams today. At the beginning of every week, every Monday, we clarify what performance expectations we want within our organization. So this is what the expectations that we will get done by the end of this week, by the end of the month. These are our goals. These are the expectations. We have our goals and then we have the expectations. This is why this is important. And then we allow opportunities for ownership within the how. On the football pitch, it looked a little something like this. Rather than stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for instruction, we provided challenges. So from here, kick the ball to knock down those 3 cones. Because in order to do that, you're going to have to kick with power and precision. And in a game scenario, whenever you pass, whenever you kick, whenever you shoot, you're also going to have to kick with power and precision. From this, I saw some of the most heated debates among 7-year-olds trying to decide if the best way to kick the ball was with the infoot or with the laces. In reality, both ways were right. So we were able to increase our toolbox of resources so that we could better achieve our goals. That began by clarifying our expectations in our what and our why, and then allowing opportunities for ownership within the how. So whenever you're leading a remote team, I really take the time to clarify my what and my why. Why are we doing this? Why is this important? And what are we doing? Then we provide opportunities for ownership within the how. Specifically, those opportunities for ownership lied within our processes, our methods, our projects, and our roles. In our processes, methods, projects, and roles, we could provide specific opportunities for ownership within our team. Now, I mentioned that with these clarified expectations and opportunities for ownership, we did have a little bit more of conflict. We had more conversations over complacency. And so that was something that we desired because we could improve our performance. So there was another area of clarity that we needed to provide within our team, and that I suggest that you provide whenever leading your remote team. And that is to clarify communication. Clarify communication. Now, communication really boils down to 4 major aspects. That is the right message delivered the right way, the right audience at the right time. Say that again. Great communication is the right message delivered the right way, right audience at the right time. And generally, whenever I have succeeded in my communication, I have been successful in all 4 of these areas. And almost every time, if I have not been successful in effectively delivering my message, it's because it was a lack of one of those 4 areas. Right message, delivered the right way, to the right audience, at the right time. So keep that in mind whenever you are communicating your message to your team. You know, it's important to keep in mind the method and how we are communicating our messages. So I'm going to go through each one of these a little bit and clarifying our communication. See, many times within remote teams, it can be easy to focus on the message, maybe not as much on the way or the method. The communication, especially in terms of performance, oftentimes is on a spectrum, an emotional spectrum of the emotion of the performance feedback. See, if we have someone that is struggling with a performance, then sending an email, sending a text, that can be a very impersonal way to address the conflict. Instead, we want to get as personal as possible, whether that be a video conferencing, phone call, in person if possible. Really try to be as personal as you can. See, I'm reminded of love letters and the incredible impact that they can have in sending them. See, whenever we receive a love letter, there's actually a span of time between each letter, between each correspondence, for emotions to build, for people to ponder on the words of each letter, to ponder on the sentiment of each one, and then the emotions begin to build. Now, this is a really desired effect with love letters, but it's not as desired of an effect whenever we're talking about emails. Sometimes something that was not very emotional to begin with can build up an emotion as there is a span of time between each correspondence for emotions to build. So whenever I work with teams, we actually come up with a system to say, okay, at what point is At what point is it better to switch the method of communication that we're using, maybe away from email into more of a position where we can get quicker feedback, such as a video conferencing, a phone call, something like that. And so keep in mind the emotion of the communication to better determine the method of communication that you are using. Also, whenever you are giving your feedback, especially in terms of performance and leading teams, it's important that we get specific to get strategic. Get specific to get strategic. As I said, I am a former football coach or soccer coach. And whenever it comes to feedback, there are three major purposes of feedback. And checking in with your team and telling them good job might sound good, but it doesn't give us a lot of information to truly improve our performance and to truly lead effectively. As a soccer coach, I found that there are three major purposes of feedback. The first purpose is to encourage desired behavior, to encourage desired behavior. Oftentimes as a coach, I would hear coaches come up at the end of the game and say, hey, good job, keep up the good work, you're doing great, well done. And while this sounds really good, it doesn't give us a lot of feedback to know what specific behavior we need, what specific behavior we want to be encouraged to be repeated and to continue. See, it may sound good, but it's not specific. And so we cannot get strategic to actually improve our performance. On the other end, another reason, another purpose of performance feedback is to correct behavior. Sometimes whenever I was coaching, I had a young lad that would come into the locker room whenever we were losing at halftime and say with complete confidence the exact thing that we needed to do to win the game. He would come in and say, guys, we just need to play better. And while this was technically right, it wasn't specific enough for us to get strategic, for us to actually improve our game. And so instead of just saying play better, we had to ask a series of questions to actually get down to the action step that we needed to take to actually be strategic and improve. The last purpose of feedback in clarifying your communication is to coach. Coaching is to build upon aspects of desired behavior. So this is when you're recognizing a strength and fostering that and building up upon that. That is what coaching is. It's a little bit in between encouraging and correcting. And whenever you are communicating to your team, whenever you're building your team and having check-ins or having that communication, I encourage you to ask yourself, am I encouraging desired behavior? Am I correcting undesired behavior? Or am I coaching, building upon behavior? And this is a good guideline to help us know if we have been successful in clearly communicating our expectations and communication within our team. And so whenever I was a football coach, we would ask ourselves these questions. Whenever I gave feedback, rather than just saying good job, I would ask myself a series of questions. What was a good job? What behavior do I want repeated? What behavior do I want corrected? What behavior can I continuously build upon as a coach? Now, this oftentimes happens within informal feedback. Had many questions, especially in this time, talking about formal feedback. See, there are two major types of feedback within organizations. The first is informal feedback. This is the conversations that we're having within our team. Especially in this remote time, people really want to know how they're doing in their performance. And having those clear communication is really important. Most studies as of late have shown that people are desiring that communication, that check-in, a couple times a week. And so that is, I check in with my team twice a week. We check in on Mondays and on Thursdays, and then we, of course, have that communication all throughout the week as well. So that's when we have our check-ins, and we look to, and I ask the question, okay, how can I encourage, correct, and coach behavior to improve performance within our team? And I ask that of myself as well. How can I better, what can I do to better equip my team for success? And then also, we look at formal feedback. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about formal feedback and its place within organizations. Now, there are some people that are of the opinion that formal feedback, oftentimes known as the annual review at the end of the year, can be kind of detrimental and a big waste of time. And that could be true if we only give formal feedback at the end of the year and we're not having continuous feedback throughout. In fact, most cities that I've seen shown and that I've experienced within our teams that we work with is that the Goldilocks standard is once a quarter or bi-monthly. And so giving that formal feedback, whether that be within a 360, within your management, some sort of formal feedback bi-monthly or quarterly can be a really good balance. See, whenever we are giving feedback, especially in terms of performance, it takes a span of time to digest the performance feedback that we have been given, come up with a game plan to adjust our performance according to that feedback, implement the adjustment, and then also have the management or team actually see the differences within that performance and see those adjustments. That entire time frame actually does usually take a couple of months. And so that's why within a larger formal feedback, quarterly or bi-monthly is more preferred. And then at the end of the year, if you want more of an annual review, it's really more of a summation of the 4 to 6 other reviews that you have been given all throughout the year. And this can help prevent us talking about things that happen in February all the way in December. There is a span of time for us to really embrace that feedback, digest it, make a game plan to get specific, to get strategic, implement that game plan, and then move forward. Absolutely. So we're going to take the time to really clarify our expectations and communications. Again, that's the right message. What are we saying? Delivered in the right way. What's the best method of communication? Is it a memo, an email, a meeting, in-person, video conference? What is our best method of communication? Delivered at the right time, and time can be the time of day. It could be the time of the week. It could be if there's a big project going on and everyone is in a frenzy about really trying to complete that project, that might not be the best time to bring something up. It might be the right time. So really analyze the right time delivered to the right audience. Who should be included in this conversation? Who should not? So asking yourself those 4 questions whenever giving your performance feedback within your team to clarify communication is critical. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to put those into the chat. The final area of clarification that we can provide within our team is clarification within leadership. Clarification within leadership. See, if we can achieve our dreams all on our own, then we're probably not dreaming big enough. We have to include more than ourselves in order to achieve something bigger than ourselves. And whenever I was working in India and working with football teams, one thing that we found is that many of our team members, especially coming in from a command-obey dynamic, were under the impression that if you obey and you obey and you obey and you obey and you obey long enough, then eventually you get to be the commander. So we actually had to take the time to define what leadership meant within our organization and what captainship meant within our organization. See, the reality is that Captain American, Captain Underpants, and Captain Crunch, they're all captains. So we had to decide what it meant for our organization and clearly define that, and then build up leaders within our organization. Providing opportunities for growth, especially within your remote team, can be a little bit different than a brick and mortar team. And so we, even within our team, we have to be very intentional to provide those opportunities, both with virtual learning, like the one that we're doing today, networking opportunities, and also opportunities to cross-train and to grow within the organization. So there's a variety of different things that we do within our team to really build up leaders within our organization. Right now, there are leaders that are being trained remotely, and this is a unique opportunity that we have. And so we're not just commanding a task, we're clarifying that what and that why, and then providing opportunities for ownership in the how, and thus creating great leaders for our organization. Now, you can see over here, there is actually, I apologize. You see, if we talk about, there's a psychologist named Bruce Tuckman, and he tells us that there is actually a system that teams go through. See, all teams go through a cycle. We go through a forming stage where we build our teams that are humble, hungry, and smart. And then there is a slight dip in performance as we storm, and we ask ourselves, how are we going to perform at our highest level? And so we begin really laying the groundwork for our methods and our processes, our forms of communication, going through that storming process and laying out the norms for your team. So this is an honest conversation that we have within our team of what norms are we going to create within our organization. Then after we go through that forming, storming, and norming phase, we're able to catapult into a higher level of performance. That's where the leadership comes in. So we can lead our team into that highest level of performance moving forward. After that, we do take the time to embrace the 5th stage of development, which is adjourning. And that's where we ask ourselves, what do we do well? And what can we do just a little bit better? From there, from these two questions, we actually go back into the storming stage and we give feedback on encouraging behavior, coaching, correcting and coaching. We get specific to get strategic to establish new norms so we can catapult into a higher performance level. So I've given you a lot of information today, a lot of stories, and hopefully a lot of tools that you can use as a guide within your organization. Last story of today, then I'm going to open it up for a few questions. See, whenever I was coaching in India, I had a young lad named Achintya, and Achintya was 6 years old, and he was so excited for his first day of football. He came running out onto the field, and he began yelling, "Pass! Pass! Pass!" And I noticed that Achintya was yelling pass even whenever the other team had the ball. And he was yelling pass whenever he was miles away from the action. He was yelling pass even whenever he had the ball. And so he was running with the ball, yelling, "Pass! Pass! Pass!" And so I looked at Achintya and I said, "Achintya, why are you yelling pass?" And he looked up at me and he said, "Miss Amberman, I do not know what it means. I only know it is a football word." See, sometimes I hear leaders sound a little bit like my friend Achintya, yelling, "Leadership, teamwork, communication, build your team, yeah!" Because we know these are really good words that can lead to big goals. But if we're in the wrong position, if we're miles away from the action, or even if we have the ball and we don't know in which direction we're going, then saying these words are not only ineffective, but they're actually detrimental to the overall communication within our team. But if we take the time to first lay a foundation by building a team that is humble, hungry, and smart, if we take the time to clarify our expectations by clearly communicating our what and our why, and then provide opportunities for ownership within the how, within our processes and our methods and our projects and our roles, if we take the time to clarify our expectations by getting very specific to get strategic, by coaching, encouraging, and correcting behavior, if we take the time to clarify our leadership and define what leadership means to our teams, and then be intentional to build up leaders within our organization, then we will be in a position to yell pass, receive the ball, move forward, and to score really big goals. Remote teams are an opportunity to really pave the way for the future, and it's an opportunity for you to lead in a new and exciting. My name is Vanderburg. I'm the founder of the Pathways Group, and if you have any questions at all, I would love to take them at this time. Oh, I'm seeing some. Yeah. Oh, can you hear me a little bit better now? Great. Awesome. What was a course above and beyond? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So as far as what buttons to push, um, a lot of that comes from relationship building. Every person is going to be a little bit different. So first, I identify what their baseline is, and to identify where they are, and because a lot of times the pushing comes from what their capability what their capability is there, and so I look at the baseline first. I also look at their personality has a huge point to do with that, and then also I look at proactive conversations. Now proactive conversations is just a simple tool that I use at the beginning of any project or whenever I come into a new team. I also use this whenever I'm working with a new client. And it's a simple conversation that says, hey, at some point in this team, at some point in this project, there's going to be tension, there's going to be conflict, and there's going to be heat. It's going to happen. So while the emotions are low now, let us proactively discuss how we're going to handle that situation whenever it inevitably arises. And this is a couple things. First off, it actually creates a normalcy for conflict. A lot of times people don't want to admit that there is tension, that there is heat, and it can be hard to detect that whenever you're in a remote team. And so this not only says that it does happen, it's actually expected. The other thing that it does is it creates a guideline, it creates a script for how we're going to handle that tension. And so whenever someone feels that their buttons have been pushed too far or not enough, it actually creates an expectation that this might happen, and we have a game plan on what to do moving forward. So that's just a really simple conversation that I use within our clients whenever we begin new projects, and then also whenever I'm coming into new team dynamics. You can also do a quick assessment of what people's baselines are and what their personality preferences are within leading those remote teams. So of course you can use Gallup, you can use StrengthsFinder, there's a ton of personality tests you can use. A simple thing that I use is I actually have the team pull out a note card, and on the front part of the card, I have them write areas in which I feel strong, areas in which I believe that I add value to the team. And then on the opposite side of the card, I have them write areas in which I hope somebody else has a strength. Someday, I really hope that there's someone on our team that is good at presentations, that is really detail oriented. And this actually can help us really identify areas that there might be tension, where there might be conflict, but it also helps us identify areas where there will more than likely be compliments as well. So then we're actually able to be very specific within our proactive conversation. Say, hey, I am a visionary, big picture type of person. I'm very good at communicating the big idea and leading the charge. But I'm really hope that there's someone on our team that is detail oriented and good with the follow up. And by finding that person, we can actually have a very specific conversation of, hey, it's probably going to frustrate you that I am not very great with details. So I'm going to try really hard to improve in that. Let's come up with a game plan whenever that tension will more than likely arise, how we're going to handle that situation. And so that's just a really quick activity that you can use, especially within remote teams, identifying team dynamics and having a game plan for how to improve those team dynamics is really critical and comes down to that relationship part. So those are just a few, again, it doesn't take a full full day workshop. It's something that you can do. We do that, but there's actually just some short conversations that you can include within your stand-ups, within your meetings, to really address team dynamics, increase understanding, and also be specific, so that it is so that you have a game plan moving forward within your teams and your performance. Looks like we have just a couple minutes left for maybe one more question. Just have a minute left. Yeah, if you guys want to connect with me on LinkedIn, if you want to connect with me on Twitter, I'm the only Amber Vanderburg out there, so pretty easy to find. I'd love to connect and have a conversation. Cool. Well, looks like we are at time. So thank you all so much for attending this presentation. Again, I'd love to connect, love to stay in touch. Yeah, love to stay in touch. And if you have any questions, all, especially in terms of building and leading remote teams, I hope that these were some tools that you can use today.